Om Tare Ture Mama Ayinjana Bunye Bujin Kara Soha Om Tare Ture Mama Ayinjana Bunye Bujin Kara Soha Om Tare Ture Mama Ayinjana Bunye Bujin Kara Soha Om Ture Mama Ayinjana Bunye Bujin Kara Soha Om Ture Mama Jana Bunye Beren Garaso 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 Om Dare Mama Jana Bunye Beren Garaso Om Dare Mama Jana Bunye Beren Om Dare Mama Jana Bunye Beren Garaso Om Dare Mama Jana Bunye Beren Garaso Om Dare Mama Jan Bunye Butengor So Romin Jin Japaran, the Susan Jago Jango and Yeran Jago on the Tabala Majala so and the Dozu Simja Dumja Lochus and Rover Sinja loved us, Chulam Dun Rover Sinja loved. Lantua Seva Sinja loved us. Trua years and Chawa Sinja loved us.
It's day number 1. It's the new year of the year 2025. And that's a very important time. And it's a very good time. And I think we are all very fortunate to be able to practice Tarā together at this excellent time. So therefore, first, Happy New Year, everyone, Dashidelek, everyone who is here joining us for the practice. And it's also important that we have a good motivation. The motivation is very important because on this special day, the motivation that is very powerful. So what you should think on such a day is that now in the new year of 2025, I'm going to do good things. I'm going to make the best use of this time in this new year. I'm going to make the best of it. I will do good things. I will do beneficial things. I will practice the Dharma. I will create merit and positive karma. So it's good to have this kind of resolution or intention for the new year. Continue with the 3rd verse in the 7 verses of supplication to Tarā. And that says, if Dharma has not arisen in one's being from the depths of one's heart, one becomes an adherent of verbal conventions. Perfect Mother Goddess, deliver those deceived by errant dogma. Term here, the Dharma has not arisen, is it from their hearts? So if the Dharma does not arise in one's being, from the depth of one's heart, yeah. So if it doesn't arise from within one's heart, so that's something we have to think about. These words are actually quite heavy and really very meaningful. So when we practice the Dharma, Dharma really arises from the depths of our heart. We become liberated and achieve temporary and ultimate happiness. And that's what we all want. We want to be happy, which is why we practice the Dharma. But we have to also see whether or not our Dharma really has arisen within us from the depths of our heart. Has our mind really connected to the Dharma? So you have to really examine your own mind. So now you have found the precious human body and you have met with the Dharma, taken refuge in the three jewels. You do your prayers, your practice, you accumulate merit. We do many things when we practice the Dharma. But we have to also see whether those things that we do are really accord with the Dharma, whether our mind is really there. So we have to see whether or not the Dharma has arisen from within our own hearts, ourselves, because it's something that only we can see ourselves. On the outside, we may look like a Dharma practitioner. Other people just see our bodies. We may sit there meditating and do retreat. We do a lot of practice, like we spin a prayer wheel and we hold our mala in our hands and recite mantras, and we sit and we meditate, we recite prayers, we do circumambulations and so forth. We do all kinds of things, prostrations. On the outer level, it seems that we're doing all these things, but then other people may think that, oh, well, this person looks like they're practicing the Dharma. But only you can know whether or not the Dharma has really arisen within your heart. So what does it mean for the Dharma to arise in your heart? It means that, for example, have I really understood impermanence? When that is really firm in your mind, then the Dharma has arisen in your heart. Or do I really trust in karma? And am I doing my best to follow the law of karma? And so that is what we need to look at when we analyze and we examine that. So it's not about the outer appearance of being a practitioner, of holding a mala or spinning a prayer wheel and so on. You have to ask yourself, is my trust in the three jewels really unfailing? What kind of virtue do I practice? How much love has arisen? How much beneficial things do I really do for others? How much do I really believe in karma? When I read all these prayers and when I sit there meditating and do all these virtuous things, how much do I really believe in karma? So that is something other people can't tell you. They can't know that. They just see your body and they may think that, oh yeah, they're sitting there, he or she's sitting there meditating. It looks like they're a really good practitioner, doing prostrations, circumambulations, meditating, and so on. So they can think easily that you are Dharma practitioner, but they can't see your mind. Only you can see it for yourself. You have to ask yourself whether or not the Dharma has really arisen in your heart. Do I really trust in karma? Am I really practicing the Dharma? Am I really trusting? Is my trust and belief in the three jewels really unshakable? Do I really see the impermanence of things? And if so, then the Dharma has arisen within your heart. And if not so much, then the Dharma has not deeply arisen within you. And so you have to look at your level of devotion to the three jewels and understanding of impermanence and so on. So the Dharma practice has to really connect to your mind. Of course, we all have some devotion to the three jewels and we have some aspiration, we do want to practice. But then still, even so, the Dharma may not totally connect with our mind. So that's something you have to look at yourself. And then next, in Tibetan, so the order is a bit different. So then the next is, so one becomes an adherent of verbal conventions, or kind of one And then, what is it? If the Dharma does not arise from in one's being, from the depths of one's heart, one becomes an adherent of verbal conventions. And one is deceived by errant dogma. And so regarding that, we do hear that we have to study the Dharma. We always say that, of course, we have to study the Dharma. We have to learn. We have to reflect. We have to practice. Mainly, we have to apply it to our mind. For example, we have to practice karma, not just understand it. So when we study the Dharma, we may gain a very deep understanding of the Dharma, but it may be that the Dharma still doesn't really connect to our heart, even if we study so much. And that's the meaning of following verbal conventions, following words, basically. You're able to say things verbally. You're able to explain things, the Dharma, extensively, but you don't deeply trust in all of that. You don't deeply believe in all of that. So when we study the Dharma, we know, we learn a lot of things, but maybe they don't arise in our mind. And that happens to anyone, the teacher and also the disciples. The teachers, they may make that mistake thinking they know much about the Dharma. And those who listen may also think that. They may think that, oh, I've studied all of that. I've learned all of that already. And I know so much Dharma. I've learned so much Dharma. But that is just following words. That doesn't mean that the Dharma really has connected to your heart. There's many things that we can know, but we have to see whether or not that, for example, we really believe in karma. So we can speak about karma, but do we really follow it and believe in it? So it's not just understanding something, it's really like practicing it. And that fault can arise for anyone, really. The disciples, there's many disciples who do that, and many lamas also have that fault. For example, a simple practice in your mind, the 37 bodhisattva practices. Maybe you think that, oh, I've already learned about that. I've already studied the 37 practices. Or I already finished practicing that peaceful deity. Now it's time for the wrathful deity, because inside you think that the wrathful deity is much more powerful and you want that blessing. And also, the words being used in the wrathful deity practice may be much more impressive, like really lofty, high-level words. And you naturally think that that's what I want to do. And then you don't really want to pay attention to all of the foundational practices. So that is all following words when the Dharma has not really arisen in the heart. And if that is how you approach the Dharma, even if you practice a wrathful deity, no siddhis or accomplishments will arise, because the accomplishment can only come if you fully believe and trust in karma, for example. So maybe you think that I know about Tarā, for example. I've already practiced such a long time in the past. I've already done all that practice. Or Chinrezig, I've already practiced Chinrezig long time ago. I did so much practice. Now it's time to move on. So in that way, we are almost like looking down on Tarā and Chinrezig. And so that all of that is really a very big mistake. And that happens when one doesn't really understand the key point of the Dharma. When one doesn't really pay attention, the key point, which is love and compassion, but rather maybe think that, well, I am more interested in just practicing Mahamudra or Dzogchen, because it sounds really good. It sounds impressive. And that's what we want to do. We want what's impressive. We want emptiness and Mahamudra and Dzogchen. we don't really want to focus too much on love and compassion, karma and impermanence. So actually, we think that we are practicing these lofty practices, but really there's all these ordinary thoughts still in our mind. And the only way to release them is by cultivating love and compassion. And that is also the only way to gain the power of the deity that we are practicing, or any other Dharma practice we do. That power comes from love and compassion. Also, for example, the preliminary practices, people sort of get it over with, and they say, oh, finished that a long time ago. And they don't pay much attention to it because they think that actually meditation is more important, no? And so you want to get finished with that and want to focus more on meditation. And of course, yes, that's true. Meditation, of course, it's very important. The problem is you can't you can't really meditate without a foundational practice. You can sit straight for sure, but real meditation is not so easy. For example, it's just like a candle flame in the wind. The mind is flickering like that. It can't stay. And it's just like that. So in our mind, there's all these thoughts, all these emotions, these afflictions in our mind. There are as many as dust particles in space. They are just everywhere all the time. And that is why without any foundation, it's extremely difficult to actually meditate, because as long as we have not purified a good amount of our negative tendencies, the karmic tendencies and karmas, it's very hard to just truly meditate. And saying these kind of things just shows that this person hasn't really understood the key point of the practice, and they're just mainly thinking about what sounds impressive. And lamas and disciples alike often make that mistake. And it happens especially in the Vajrayana, when we practice wrathful deities. Of course, all these Hiram deities are very precious, but they all arise from love and compassion. That is what we have to train in first. Whether it is Tarā or a wrathful deity, first out, we purify all into emptiness, we cultivate love and compassion, and then we visualize the deity. We do not just go directly from a very low state to the highest level, because we just basically simply can't get there like that. We have to go in stages. And so being deceived by errant dogma, so that is, the errant dogma is to really, being deceived really means you are deceiving yourself. So you're not paying attention much to karma, love and compassion, impermanence. You're more thinking about the impressive things, the lofty things. And this is how you're really deceiving yourself, because you are missing out on the basis, the foundation, which is significant when you die. Because even if you have all these lofty practices, they will not be of so much benefit when you die without the foundation, the firm foundation. So the reason why we are helpless when we die is because we don't have the foundation. The foundation is our real belief in karma and love and compassion. We haven't really trained the mind much in that. We focused only on these high practices, Mahamudra, Dzogchen, the Yidam deities of the highest Anuttara Yoga Tantra. We've read many books about the Dharma, these high tantric practices, but has it really arisen in your mind? Have you really connected to it in your mind? When you die, all of this loftiness will be of no use at all. It may be impressive now, but when you die, you have just fooled yourself. Because when you die, then there still will be thoughts of fear and panic and total anxiety. And why does that still happen? Because it's still in your mind, and it all comes from your mind. So we need to actually cultivate an antidote to fear and panic at death. And that antidote is love and compassion, the foundational practice. When that is not within us deeply, when that is not deeply rooted within us, then fear and anxiety and confusion will occur after our death. So all of this understanding alone is completely useless at the time of death. When it really comes down to it, what counts is how deeply you have connected with something, not how well you understand something. That is useless when it comes down to it. And in order for you to really connect, you need to start with the foundation and work gradually. So this is then an undeceiving dogma or undeceiving spiritual view. So basically, the practice essentially has to become a method to tame the afflictive emotions. And if the practice does not become that, if it doesn't serve that purpose, and instead actually afflictive emotions even increase, for example, you practice the Dharma, you know all of it, but then at the same time, you develop jealousy and competitiveness and so on as you practice the Dharma, and then you are deceiving yourself. You're following an errant dogma, and that will be of no use later. So in that case, the Dharma will not be accomplished, and self-grasping will only increase. There are many different religious practitioners in the world, not just Buddhists. This dogma here refers to the various spiritual religious traditions in the world. And there's also many people who do not follow any religion. And then there's many different kinds of religions in the world. So mainly in Buddhism, what the religion is for, what it teaches us, what it shows us is karma and the meaning of emptiness. And if we understand and practice it, we can become liberated through these teachings. And we can attain a state of peace and happiness in this life and ultimately attain enlightenment. That is, if we practice it properly. If we do not practice the Dharma properly, our religion properly, even if we understand the words, then we will still create causes of attachment and hatred, causes of birth in the lower realms, as we practice the Dharma. For example, we may have some biases in our mind, think that I'm a Buddhist, and so just naturally you don't hold any other traditions or religions in such high regard as you would hold your own. And within Buddhism also we have many different traditions. We have the Mahayana, we have the Theravada, we have the Vajrayana. So for example, people identify and they say that so this one belongs to the Theravada tradition, I'm a Mahayana practitioner, I'm a Vajrayana practitioner, and so on. And so then we hold our own tradition as superior and the others as inferior. So we don't really have so much respect and faith and devotion, a pure perception toward them. We may think I'm a Vajrayana practitioner, I'm a Mahayana. So that's much higher. And we really do actually we do that. And we have to be honest, really look and try to really see if that's true or not. We will not do that sometimes. And we actually do often think that we are a bit superior, for example. And even within the Tibetan Buddhist traditions, some may think I'm Nyingma or I'm Kagyo and he's Sakya, he's Gelugpa. So we make all these divisions in our mind. And of course, thinking that I'm Kagyu practitioner in itself is nothing wrong with that. But what's wrong is then not to pay any respect, any pure perception and faith in any of the other traditions. So that's really, that's the important point. So there's nothing wrong with saying I'm Kagyu, but often it does happen in the Tibetan tradition with different lamas that they're holding on to their own tradition in many different ways. So it's important that we don't look down on any of the other traditions. So it is said somewhere that we have to hold others with a pure perception, like holding a precious jewel. Of course, we can follow our own tradition. Through our own tradition, for example, I practice Kagyu, and I will follow it because if I do, then I can become liberated. There's nothing wrong with that. But also others have these qualities. They have the same qualities, the same potentials that we have. And therefore, they also deserve our respect. And we should not hold any bias and think that we are better in any way. And it's really because of these biases and holding like prejudices in our mind that there is a lot of conflict and wars fought in the name of religion in the world. We can see it everywhere. For example, it may happen because in a country, a group of people may think that we want to destroy this kind of religion. Or they may just want to make their own religion stronger at the cost of everyone else. So there's a lot of conflict that happens in the world in the name of religion. And all of that shows that those who do that, they are not actually practicing their religion properly. So that is what Jigten Sumgon means here with being deceived by errant dogma. Being deceived by errant dogma basically means that you have an attachment to your own side and an aversion against the other side. And that is bound to lead to conflict. And this is then when the canon or the religion becomes deceptive. You're deceiving yourself by following verbal conventions. And so in this way, through practicing the religion, you are not actually liberating yourself from samsara, but instead you're actually creating more causes of birth in samsara, more causes of suffering, more causes of unhappiness for yourself and others. So it all comes from these biased views that we hold, and mainly because of self-grasping, and that already takes away our peace and happiness in this life. We will always be unhappy in this life. And then in future lives, that will cause us to take birth in the 3 lower realms. It's all because of self-grasping. It's because we haven't really trained the mind in love, compassion, and emptiness. And so as we practice the Dharma, then we do it with self-clinging, and thereby we create just more causes of birth in samsara. So this is what we are supplicating Tarā here for. So we supplicate the perfect Mother Goddess to protect us from holding on, being deceived by these errant dogmas, to liberate us from this danger. Because Tarā, you are the one who is already liberated from the extreme of samsaric existence and also dwelling in nirvana. So since she has the power to protect us, we request Tarā, the perfect Mother Goddess, to protect us from these perils. Then it says, next verse, having seen the mind so hard to realize, one does not habituate it. Mother Goddess of mindfulness, deliver those distracted by errant action. So having seen the mind so hard to realize, it's extremely difficult to realize the mind. And why is it so difficult? We mentioned before why it is so difficult. It is because we still have those karmic tendencies, these imprints in our mind they obscure our true nature that we call Mahamudra, or the natural state of the mind, the state of emptiness. That is your mind, but you cannot see it. You're not aware of it because the mind is obscured. You cannot be aware of it as long as the mind is obscured by conceptual thinking, afflictions. Even though your true nature is emptiness, you don't see it. And it's hard to clear away these obscurations because we have habituated to these tendencies for many lifetimes, since beginningless time. So it's extremely difficult to just see through, penetrate through all of these layers of obscurations. It's extremely difficult. And that is why, as you mentioned before, we have to accumulate merit and purify our obscurations on a foundation first. We do all of that. We practice the Dharma, we study the Dharma, we meditate and purify obscurations only for that purpose, to see our true nature. That is so difficult to see, and that we cannot see for as long as the obscurations are still there. So it's very similar to what we mentioned before. Often people think that meditation is so easy when it's actually not that easy. It's also not that easy just to look through those obscurations, those layers, because they are there, so you can look through them, those layers of obscurations. So that's the reason why we say it's not so easy. It's because of these thick layers of obscurations, and we need to remove them by accumulating merit and purifying obscurations. And we do that through cultivating love and compassion. But we cannot just directly, instantly realize emptiness like that. So we need the foundational practices. We need to accumulate vast amounts of merit. We need to practice virtue. Otherwise, it's not so easy to just realize emptiness. Because the realization of emptiness is the perfect ultimate view that sees the nature of everything that exists, and it also sees everything that exists. So it knows everything that exists and its nature. That is the perfection of the view of emptiness, and that is not so easy. So even, for example, when you receive the instructions from a guru, the guru may give you a pointing out instruction to the nature of the mind. It's still not so easy to see if you do not have a good foundation. So now you have found a precious human body, and you have met with the Dharma, and you have met with excellent gurus. I'm sure that most of you have met with many great gurus, many great masters from whom you have received many teachings, many instructions already. But still, even though all of us have done that, we often end up not really practicing so much. So we have an understanding, we know what we heard, we have received these teachings, but we don't really always apply them. We don't always practice them. So there is no continuum that we sustain. And mainly that's because we are constantly taken, carried away by our thoughts and our afflictive emotions. And so that's why it is so difficult to see the mind. And then it says, even if we have seen the mind, it's very difficult to habituate it. People don't habituate it. So, for example, maybe at a certain time you receive a instruction from the guru, a pith instruction, and you actually see the mind. You actually have a glimpse into the nature of the mind, but then you don't sustain it. You don't keep that continuum going through practice. So you glimpsed it, and then again it fades away because you're not meditating all the time. You're not habituating to. The key is habituation. So maybe you have a guru that is very powerful, that you have a lot of devotion for, and who gives you these instructions. And you may have a moment where you really feel, yes, this is what it is. I see now. So we do have this glimpse of knowing, but we also have to sustain it. Just having seen it alone will not stay with us. It won't be so helpful. We have to make the effort to really maintain that state. And as you deepen the habituation, your familiarization with that, your awareness will become clearer and clearer. And as it becomes clearer and clearer, you will finally then realize the nature of the mind. But if you do not habituate, if you do not always train the mind on an ongoing basis, then, as it says here, you will become distracted by errant dogma, received by errant dogma. By errant action. You're distracted by errant action. So even you're a Dharma practitioner, so what does it mean to be distracted by errant action? So, for example, we may only focus on just doing virtuous things with body and speech, but not to pay attention to the mind at all. And so then in this way, the mind just continues to stay obscured. And often actually it can even happen that those very virtuous actions may actually contribute to obscuring the mind even more. So of course we still have to do those virtuous things. But Tilopa said to Naropa that when you're actually meditating and rest in the unborn mind, at that time, do not engage in any virtuous, even virtuous actions with body and speech. It's because if you replace the meditation with virtuous actions of body and speech, then the non-conceptual awareness will fade away again. For example, you may sit there and meditating, you're holding mindfulness, and then the thought arises, maybe I should do some prostrations, or maybe I should do some prayers. So don't think in that way. That's what Naropa is saying, because then that will cause your viewing of emptiness to disappear. So during your meditation in emptiness, do not engage in any physical or verbal activity, even virtues. Just meditate. But then, of course, for us beginning practitioners, again, we do need to engage in virtuous activities with body and speech. Because, as we mentioned, we do need to purify our obscurations, our negative habitual imprints, and we need to accumulate merit in order to realize emptiness. For this errant action, being distracted by errant action, there's many things we are distracted by in this life. All of our worldly affairs and the things that we do for this life are all, to a Dharma practitioner, really worldly distractions or like errant activities, or like literally negative activities. So there are negative activities that we are just distracted by. Even if we practice the Dharma, the mind is still distracted. For example, we are here today practicing Tarā together physically, but then it's possible that the mind is distracted and thinking about something else. Maybe you're thinking about some kind of worldly thing that you need to do. And so that is this distraction, distracted by errant action. And we think that things that we want to accomplish in this life, for example, we want to be really successful and famous and happy. And we do all kinds of things, virtues and non-virtues. And all of that to a Dharma practitioner is distraction. For example, a student going to school, if that student doesn't actually sit in the classroom, if he goes outside to do other things, or if he doesn't listen to what the teacher is saying, then he won't understand anything. And in the end, he won't pass the test. So all of that is what we call distraction by errant action. So basically, it means that we are unable, it's an inability to turn your mind toward virtue. So an inability to practice virtue with your mind, meaning that the body, it may look like you're practicing virtue, but the mind is not really there with that virtuous act. So you're unable to turn toward virtue because of distraction. And the reason why we call it a negative activity is because it leads to negative results. It leads to suffering. And most of these negative activities, these distractions, are somehow connected to attachment or hatred or attachment to oneself, like selfishness and aversion against others, or just ignorance, unawareness, and so on, or just desire rising in the mind. All of these prevent us from turning our mind toward virtue. So we are distracted by this life. And even if we practice a little bit of virtue, we are not there wholeheartedly, and we don't fully believe in karma. So that is what we call it is being distracted by mundane activities or negative activities. And we call them negative because they by being distracted by them, we are missing out on an excellent opportunity, the opportunity we have in this excellent body. We are fully missing out because of these distractions, because we don't really believe in karma, we don't really practice, so we can't really focus our body, speech, and mind to the practice. And often it's because our afflictions are so strong. There's very strong feelings of anger and jealousy, very, very strong afflictions. But also subtle afflictions distract us. For example, somebody who actually wants to meditate, for example, they're doing a retreat, they're in a retreat, the mind just can't stay, and it may not be a course, a strong affliction, but they still think about all kinds of things, and so they are distracted by all kinds of thoughts in their mind. So here we are supplicating to Tarā, protect us so that we do not become controlled by these distractions. Protect us so that we are able to be mindful. So we supplicate the mother goddess of mindfulness to help us never to be separated, never to separate from mindfulness. The next verse. Okay. Mind is spontaneous non-dual wisdom, yet one is bound by the binding habit of dualistic perception. Goddess of non-dual mind, deliver those who are bound no matter what they do. So the non-dual wisdom, spontaneous non-dual wisdom. So the non-dual wisdom, or the Dharma kaya, or the nature of your mind, or we call it the state of emptiness, whatever you may call it, it is your own mind. You find it within your own mind. It's actually your own mind. So that's what the mind is. The mind is spontaneous, primordial, spontaneous non-dual wisdom. But we don't know that. And we don't know that, we can't experience that because of our dualistic perception. So we have a tendency, a habit of seeing things in a dualistic way. And because that's how we perceive things, existence, we cannot see our non-dual nature. Our sixth sense consciousnesses are constantly drawn to various sense perceptions, form, sound, smell, taste, touch. And then that creates the perception of a perceiving mind and a perceived object. So we create the perception of a subject-object duality. And this is what keeps us in bondage. So we are bound by the binding habit of dualistic perception. And then no matter what we do, we are bound by this perception, because whatever we perceive, we see it that way. We experience it in a dualistic way. For example, we have a lot of hopes to find happiness. We have attachments, and we have a lot of fear. We are afraid of suffering. And when we actually suffer, the experience is often totally overwhelming to us because of self-grasping, because we believe in the existence of what we experience as it is, whatever it is, happiness or sadness, whatever it is. Why do we believe it? Because we see things in a dualistic way. That's because of our dualistic perception. We hold things to be true and separate from us. And so that is what keeps the mind in bondage. And for example, we always think that I don't want to suffer. I want to avoid suffering. But there's nothing we can do about it. We can't stop it from happening. We still run into difficulty, no matter what. We are bound, deliver those who are bound, no matter what they do. So we supplicate to Tarā that may I maybe become like you, the goddess of non-dual mind, realizing just like you, the state of non-duality, the truth of non-duality. Grant your blessings that we may realize our true nature. To realize your true nature, however, you have to practice, you have to meditate. Of course, it's not enough to just cry out to Tarā and ask for blessings. You also have to practice, because Tarā is also not a separate entity, but she is your own non-dual mind, your own awareness. And that is what you need to invoke through practicing, through meditation. And when you meditate, dualistic perception of self and other will go away. And only then can you really understand the nature of emptiness. And then as you stay in the state of emptiness, it will dawn to you how things are actually not separate, are non-dual. And so there's this great instruction by Rangchung Dorje, the Paskama by Rangchung Dorje, Mahamudra teaching. And he said that by looking at objects, the objects become empty of true existence. So we see various things, we hear things, and so on. But when you actually look at those things, they lose their substance, their concreteness. When you truly look at them, they are no longer so concrete. So you see how they don't really exist. They appear, but when you really look closely, then you see that actually they don't exist that way. Anything, our perceptions of form, sound, smell, taste, touch, it's all really the perception of our own mind. And you can see that when you just look closer. So, for example, we're not saying that nothing is there. For example, we're not saying there is no house here, no building here. We're not saying that. We're saying that the building does not inherently exist. It's not what it appears to be. It appears, but it is not what you think the way it appears to you. So you think it's real, and that's what it is, and that's the mistaken perception. And then that quote continues. It says that by looking at the mind, you find the empty essence of the mind. When you look at the nature of your mind, actually, you see that there's nothing actually there. It's not that there is anything. There is the empty essence. And now the quote continues, and then by looking at both, meaning subject and object now, by looking at both, you see the emptiness of both. So there is no subject and no object, in other words. So these words by Rangjung Dorje and what we just read here in the Tarā supplication, they have the same meaning.
Dimbati yanda tongna neze jimde tindami shizi bomona yung kunjin jalame chabdo soro shibate. Yanda tongna neze chansi. Ta nga ngone yapo chindu yos. Nga yapo chigo sanko yo, yapo chindu yos. Yena ya jimde ji
So
tindri.
abiding in the
Jimde tindri
perfect
te
truth,
sakya
one
ngan
is
pe lenga pe
unconscious of
shibsha
the
shibbo
dependent
yinzari
truth
tene.
of cause
Shima
and
des jimde
result.
tindri mi shibe.
Mother Goddess of
Shibse dona
Omniscience,
momba le jimde.
deliver those
Jimde ke tindri so
ignorant
jibse chawa nga
of the
shima le.
point to
Lise
be
jibse rima shiji
understood.
tene.
Though abiding in the perfect truth. So we think that I want to do good. I want to be a good practitioner. And so we have these thoughts. But then do we actually do it? Is the thing. So we want to believe in karma, but karma is also very subtle. So there is much to it. It's quite intricate. It's complex. So the interplay of of an interdependent of relation. So it gets quite deep when it comes to the way karma works. And so here we supplicate to Tarā, grant me your blessings that I may be able to understand the intricacies of karma, cause and effect. I do not fully understand. So please, Goddess of Omniscience, grant me your blessing so that I can fully understand the workings of karma, cause and effect. And so this Mother Goddess of omniscience is the mind that knows all the phenomena, and it knows the nature of all phenomena. That's the all-knowing or omniscient mind. So we supplicate to Tarā to understand truly the workings of karma. And karma really is the most important, the principal view and practice of Buddhism. So as Buddhists, we all accept karma. We believe in karma. But then do we actually follow karma? That's the question. So it's not enough to accept karma, to believe in it. We also have to actually follow it. But karma is very intricate. It's very complex. But in essence, whatever you do will eventually ripen. Nothing goes wasted, virtue or non-virtue. If you do something good, it will ripen one day. Even if it's just a very small thing, it will ripen. And even if it's just a very small non-virtuous act, it will ripen one day. No matter what you do, it will never just go away. It is said that even if 100 aeons may pass, it will not go away. You will not just lose your karma somewhere along the way. It will stay there, and at some point, it will mature into its corresponding result. So whatever you do with body, speech, and mind will eventually ripen. And so therefore we supplicate to Tarā to understand this point. And then next verse then says, everything is inseparable from the nature of unelaborated space. Mother of perfect awakening, deliver those disciples who still cannot see this. Unelaborated space. So that is the nature of your mind, the empty nature of the mind, or the non-dual primordial awareness. That's the unelaborated space, the space-like nature. And everyone has that mind. All beings, yourself and all other beings, have this unelaborated mind. But we have not realized this mind. And because we haven't seen it, we continue to wander in samsara, and we continue to experience suffering. So until we realize the unelaborated mind, we continue to experience suffering. So here we supplicate to Tarā, the mother of perfect awakening, to protect us who still cannot see this. until we can see it. Please grant your blessings and protect us. Grant your blessings so we experience temporary happiness and attain ultimate enlightenment. So now we've been going through these verses just quickly, so it was kind of a rough outline. So.
Ge wan de ye nyer de da je zan zhor man zheb je ne zhou ai je jia ma le ba te ye sa lang gu bai shu. Page number 81.
Page 81. By this virtuous practice, may I quickly realize Arya Tarā, and may all sentient beings without exception be established in that state.
Chancho Sencho Rinpoche Ma Chien Pa Nan Chi Jen Che Ye Pa Nyam Ba Me Ba Ya Kone Konda Te Wa Sho. Thank you, translators. Very helpful. See you again. Happy New Year.
New Year. Happy New Year. See you soon.
Thank you, Rinpoche, and all the translators for Japanese, Vietnamese, and Chinese. So now we'll go for a lunch break. So we will resume at 1:45. So our volunteers now are distributing the lunch bento. So please remain at your seat. So we'd like to encourage everyone to come back by 1:45 for the next session.
Tumba lame sanje Rinpoche Joba lame tamje Rinpoche Rinpa lame genda Rinpoche Yamne Gwanjo Zum Lan Ju Bambu